Tess, I can see your slides are up now. Are you ready to go?
Yeah.
Sorry to making you a rush changeover. I forgot you were in the same room trying to change everything over. But if you're ready to go, I'll hand over to you now.
Okay. Okay. So, and welcome to Santa's Material Collection. You have all been selected by the North Pole Materials Department to a lovely group of elves that is responsible for solving all of Santa's Christmas-related problems. This year, Santa comes to you with a very important task. He's been using the same kit every year for a long time, and along the way, it's become quite run down, and it's showing a decent amount of signs of wear and tear. You would expect this after using the same kit for so long, but with Christmas coming up, he doesn't want to risk any breakages on the big day, and he has to run on a very tight schedule. And falling behind that schedule could result in missing houses or completely not fitting the timescale and being caught out around the world. So he is in dire need of an upgrade. So to start with, he gets you to consider have a look at his sleigh. The sleigh needs to be able to carry a lot of presents and Santa himself, and it's the main method of transportation, right, around the whole world in one night. And luckily, he's already watched the last presentation and he knows how to effectively pack all the presents in, but that doesn't mitigate for the fact that they are very heavy and it needs to be made of the most suitable material to protect them and hold them all in all night. There are a few options that you consider for the main sleigh structure, so let's have a look at them together and see how they compare. At our disposal, we could choose between plastic, wood, or metal. To be able to understand a bit more about the best options, let's look at the differences in their properties. So plastic is colourful and it's lightweight and it's recyclable, which is could be quite a sustainable option. But it's quite difficult to reshape. And if you do end up having a bit of a dent or a bit of a bit of impact on the way, it's likely that it will crack. And then it's quite a lot of resources to fix the whole sleigh. You can't just fix a little bit of it easily with plastic. And as we want this to last a long time, it might not be the best way of going about it. Another option is wood. It's a natural resource and it would be easy to carve and paint would stick to it easily. So you can make it look very Christmassy and very pretty quite easily. But wood is a bit more of a brittle material often, and you have a lot less control over imperfections in the internal structure because it's naturally grown. So however the tree naturally grows, that's kind of just what you have to deal with. With less control over imperfections, you do have higher risks of unpredictable breakage along the way. So maybe we'd want a little more control. The final option is metal. It is strong and tough and relatively low cost in this much of a bulk material. And you can more easily reshape small dents and things. You can just push them out, and it's a long-term use sleigh. So perhaps that would be a good option long-term to not have to replace the large bits of the structure. It's really heavy and paint is not going to stick to it as easily. You're more likely to get paint chipping off. Maybe every year you might have to repaint that, so that might not be something you want to be doing repeatedly. So having a look at all of these, you decide actually as a group that your priority is making sure that the presents and themselves are safe. So in this case, you opt for the metal. Now, you've put your sleigh together and you've hooked up a reindeer to it, and you've started loading in some practice test weights to see how things run. Your reindeer is hooked up, and as it starts to go, it suddenly stops, can't go any further. And this is due to too much friction on the runners. So now you have the problem of how can we reduce the friction? You did choose a heavier material, and with the addition of the presents, there's going to be a lot of friction in those runners. So we need to find a way of reducing that. So you all run off around the workshop and around the North Pole to find options for material. The first one you come up with is ice. There's loads of it around, and you've all had run-ins with ice, it's pretty slippery. The second option could be you go into the kitchen and find non-stick pans, and you look up and you find out that they are non-stick because of Teflon, which is the material used to coat them. And the final group go up to the slopes and have a look and talk to some of the skiers, and they find out that the skiers were using wax on the bottom of their skis to make them more easy to slide over the stone. So you come back together as a group and you have a bit of a chat about these new materials that might be able to work on the runners. So ice, yeah, you all know it's very slippery and it's really easy to get. It's everywhere, it's all over the place. But Santa's not just staying at the North Pole for the Christmas Eve rituals. He has to go all the way around the world. And although it's winter, it might not be freezing everywhere. And actually, not everywhere around the world experiences Christmas in winter. So it's pretty obvious that if you used ice for that, it would melt quite quickly. The second option, Teflon, it is hard and it has a pretty long lifespan. You know that those pans have been in the Santa's cupboards for years and he's not replaced any of them, and they're still doing pretty well. But it is a bit more expensive and it's a little bit harder to get because you can't just go outside and find a Teflon on the ground and something like ice. The final option, wax, you find out from the skiers out here that it improves with use and it can be reapplied over and over again once it starts to wear down. But you're using those runners repeatedly over one night, and it would need reapplying quite regularly in that context. And that's perhaps a bit too much of a time commitment on such a tight schedule as Christmas Eve. So based on that, we think it's probably not a great idea, although wax would be a much easier thing to get hold of. It's probably not good long term to have to keep reapplying this wax when you could spend a bit more and do a bit more work to get Teflon runners and then have it stay around for a long time. This is something that's going to be used for many years. So you decide on Teflon. Now, in this running around the workshop, around the outside, finding ice, you suddenly realise, oh, what are we going to do about mitigating risk of slipping on the ice? It's pretty easy to get injured by just basically falling over, and that could cost the whole operation if someone like Santa or just one of the elves got injured. So you think we need to upgrade the shoes that we've got, that we're working with. So again, you run around, you go out and find some different materials that might be able to work. First of all, one of you thinks, oh, well, we have concrete all over the workshop and none of us slip inside because it's a really grippy surface and it's nicely textured. Another group think, well, we use glue to stick lots of decorations to the presents and they never slip off. They're always stuck on there very well. And a final group go, oh, well, actually, we use rubber for the wheels of toy cars and they are only able to wheel forwards. They can't slide sideways. So maybe that would be an option for keeping from slipping over on the big. So again, come together, debate it, find out what you already know. Concrete, you know it's easy to shape and you know it's pretty cheap. There's a lot of it in the workshop and it wasn't too expensive to get. And it's also textured, as you've seen, and quite durable. It doesn't have to be replaced very often. But in this context, you're making shoes off the floor, and concrete is quite brittle and quite heavy. You wouldn't want to be walking around in concrete shoes. Even if you didn't slip over, you wouldn't be able to move your feet very well, and it would be really uncomfortable. So the second option comes up, got glue. It's very sticky, you know that from experience, and it's very flexible. And once you've stuck something down, it's staying there, it's not going to slip or fall over. But maybe it's too sticky. If once it's set, you're not going to be able to move anywhere. And you kind of need to be able to walk in your shoes. Otherwise, what's the point in wearing the shoes? For the final option, rubber, you know that it can be naturally sourced. You've been sourcing it for the workshop. You already have access to it. It's quite easy to shape. You know that you can mold, that it's able to be molded into intricate shapes for these toy tires. It's used a lot of different materials toys as well. And it's bendy and flexible, so you'd be able to move your feet. So you opt with. Finally, it gets to working out how to pack the presents in. You know how to do it efficiently, but you're looking at the wrapping paper thinking, is this going to be enough to protect those presents? Maybe not. So you have considerations. You could just have the wrapping paper, but it would be easy to see the label and make sure you're delivering to the right people. Or you could add a protective layer. You could go with cardboard box, or you could go with a clear plastic. So looking at these, just having wrapping paper, it would be colourful and fun, would look very pretty on the sleigh. It would be lightweight. You're not going to add any additional weight if you've not got any additional packaging outside of what the presents would be delivered in. And it's relatively low cost. You're not adding additional packaging. You don't have to buy more than you are actually using. But it's not going to absorb any impact. It's very thin. It's not going to stop any of that force going to the presents. It's not very strong either. It's designed to be easy to rip, and it's also not very waterproof, which if it's out on the sleigh in the bad weather, potentially, it's going to need to be protected from everything that's possible. So the second consideration, cardboard, can absorb a decent amount of impact. It will take some of the energy of any bumps away from presents themselves. It's recyclable, which means that if it did sustain any damage, it's less of an environmental impact to get rid of it and then replace it next year. And also, it can pack down smaller, which is really important because when you're not using the cardboard boxes, they can't just sit around in the workshop, not enough space for that. But they're not waterproof, which is what gave you the idea for the third option. So a clear plastic box would be strong and would be waterproof, and it'll be really easy to read the labels, whose presents inside, so you don't have to keep opening every single box to find out whose gifts are in there when you're delivering them. But it's not going to absorb as much impact as a cardboard box, and it can't pack away small, which is a major issue in the workshop. You've got all of those presents all year round, all those materials for those presents all year round. You need to be able to store extra things away nicely. It also, additionally, as we keep covering, is heavier than the cardboard or just having the wrapping paper. And that is already an issue that we're having to mitigate. So maybe adding to that is not something we want to risk. Based on those decisions, you decide to go with cardboard. As it's leading up to the big day, you have a look at the weather forecast and you find out that it's going to be raining and snowing, which with climate change over the past few years, you've seen the weather gradually getting worse and worse. You think maybe this is the year that we need to upgrade Santa's coat. However, you want to keep that iconic look, really, because he's so recognisable for his outfit. A lot of people recognise who he is just based on his clothing. So you have a look and maybe think, maybe we could make a raincoat out of red plastic. It would be waterproof and windproof, but it wouldn't be very insulating. So this leads on to the second idea of using silver plastic. This wouldn't maintain that iconic red outfit, and it's the silver plastic film kind of thing. So you'd still have your windproof and waterproof properties, but it would also additionally reflect some of the heat coming off of Santa back in to keep him a little bit warmer. But this one isn't very strong, so it wouldn't last very long. And again, he's going to be using this kit every single year. You need something that's going to last a lot longer. The final option in consideration is wool. It stops heat from escaping by trapping air in the fibers rather than reflecting heat back. So it's a different method of insulation. It's quite easy to source and it's replenishable because the heat just going back its wool. So it will have less of an environmental impact. But this time it's not waterproof. We could make wool red if we put some dye into it. But if it's just going to get wet and soggy, then it might not really be a great job at keeping him warm all night. It's just going to work temporarily. Having a look at all these things, though, you have a difficult problem because none of them individually fulfills your issue. So in this case, you decide actually you're going to combine all three. You can have red plastic on the outside to be waterproof and weatherproof, but not needing to have the insulating properties because you can put wool on the inside to keep some of that heat in, and you can add to that with the silver plastic as well to make sure that he's really warm. And so that demonstrates that actually sometimes you might need to use more than one material to get the property that you want. So that's it. You've made it to Christmas Eve. You have in the lead up to Christmas redesigned a sleigh successfully. You've reduced the run of friction to help the reindeer make sure they can carry the sleigh. You've decreased the risk of anyone slipping and having injuries before the big day. You've appropriately protected all the gifts so no one's getting anything that's broken, and you've protected Santa's health from the bad weather. So you're all able to stand and watch him go off and fulfill his jobs, knowing that you have done everything you can to prepare him for the big day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Tess, for that overview of the preparation that will be happening at the North Pole at the moment, making sure they've got all those materials in place, ready for Christmas. They must have a really big material science department up at the North Pole to make sure all that is happening at the same time with some really amazing equipment. And thank you for introducing us to the idea of not just using one material, but actually combining things together, creating composite materials, and how actually everything around us is made from a material. And actually, as material scientists, a lot of what we do is thinking about the best use of materials for different applications. I didn't know if you wanted to quickly talk about what your research is that you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, I can do. So I'm also doing a PhD at Manchester, and I am researching a combination of nanomaterials and ceramics to make composite coatings. For a combination, I'm looking at wear resistance in mechanical components, and I'm also looking at making devices and components for devices to combine basically printing nanomaterials onto metallic structures.
So between your PhD and your extra work at the North Pole, everything is just really, really busy at the
Really
moment.
busy at this time of year.
Yeah, really busy for everyone. So thank you very much for helping Santa out with all this as well. I'm sure he really appreciates all the help.